2, 3, 4. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is tonight in a one-horse open sleigh. Hey, you know what? I don't think I can sing. It's hard for me to sing and play at the same time.
Oh, dude. I really had high hopes for you and being in a band one day. So
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, but you would be the singer. Let's try it again. Let's try it again, okay?
Okay.
Jingle.
Jingle bells, jingle all the way. I'm such a freak, I can't believe I'm singing on a talk show about IoT. I need a new guitar, maybe a new car, maybe a digital twin. Who knows what 21 is gonna bring so far? What the hell?
Merry Christmas!
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Ho, ho, ho.
This is the kind of Christmas you're gonna get. These two guys were like just getting a bag full of coal or ashes and switches, you know.
That was just a mirror of 2020.
Yes. Yes.
Tomorrow and the next day are going to be days to be merry. So
yes,
let's just at least try to have a hopeful mindset going into 2021.
Yes. Hopefully everybody's happy and healthy and all that good stuff.
All I can say is that the coolest thing in 800 years happened over the last 2 days, I think, right?
Oh, tell us all about it.
Yeah. It was a convergence.
Convergence.
Once in 800 years, Jupiter and Saturn kind of cross paths.
That's pretty crazy. I've seen some cool pictures out there
really
on the
awesome.
interwebs. Yeah.
I have a photo. Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, I got to see that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You never, with astronomical things and Seattle, sometimes you miss them. Because, we have a different kind of climate up here that's called, the technical term for meteorologists is called gloomy.
Really? Okay. I thought it was too many damn trees.
No, we have a lot of trees, but we also have a lot of gray and rain. Actually, we're going to have some sun today.
Yeah, I'll send you a picture.
But I guess that's why it's so green up here. It's because it's damp and rainy. We did have some snow a couple of days ago, like the night before last. We had some snow for a while, so that was exciting.
Great.
Everybody's getting in the spirit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? What do you think about the house? Pretty good, right?
Golf clap.
We try to go like nuts every year as much as we can.
I'm so impressed. That's over the top.
Of course, this is a typical California style, San Diego style home.
Yeah, it looks exactly like the kind of houses I see in SoCal. Exactly. Clark Griswold. Yes, with your hat. Oh my gosh.
Guess whose hat this is? It's not Santa's, by the way.
Whose is it? Whose is that?
My son's. Little baby boys, yeah.
That's pretty exciting. That looks like it would cover a lot of his body, actually.
Barely fits. Well, actually, he has a pretty big head, just like his dad. So.
Oh wow! Yeah. Lots of brain power. I can feel it. That's outstanding.
Yeah.
What in the world are we talking about? Is this our special holiday edition?
Yeah, this is a Christmas edition.
It's our Christmas edition. Yep. I'm so excited. This is like our equivalent of like the Charlie Brown Christmas or something.
Yep, Charlie Brown Christmas special, and
excellent.
You're Woodstock, and I'm Snoopy.
Excellent. Is someone going to pull the football away at the last minute when you're trying to kick it, or never mind?
Yeah. Well, we don't have Charlie Brown on today, so.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. He's not here today. I think you all know who Charlie Brown is, though.
Yes.
You know who we're talking about.
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Wah, wah.
So hey, something good's got to happen.
Yep.
The world of IoT, what are we predicting? So what we're talking about this week, I guess, on this special episode is where we think IoT is going to go in 2021. I mean, that's not a really long runway.
I know.
1 year in in the world of IoT. Despite how digital things are, the IoT thing is dragged on for quite some time.
Operative word, drag.
Yeah, drag, exactly. So, I mean, what can we expect? More of the same, or a little bit something different and better? Progress.
Yeah. I think we probably secretly, quietly, behind the scenes, made a bunch of progress this year. You know how everyone's so focused on the current events and freaked out, and what they probably didn't realize that a lot of times you might need that. You talk about reflecting on the past or whatever. I think we'll discover, maybe as people take some time off over the holidays or in January, we'll kind of sit around and look back and go, oh, wow, a whole lot of stuff happened in 2020. We just didn't know about it because we were so focused on the pandemic and everything. Like, obviously we've all heard, every tech person, analysts, tech leaders, we accelerated digital transformation by X number of years during this year. I absolutely believe that. Now, some people, when you hear them say it, it's like, is this self-serving? Or are you just trying to get people to buy more of your tech from your company? But when I think about some of the digital transformation that happened, I'm going to not think about too pie in the sky stuff, but I'll think about where organizations had to pivot quickly to survive. And I'm not going to stick with IoT specifically. I apologize. I'm just going to, but a lot of times we like to talk about, it's connectivity, it's digital experiences, it's a digital whatever. It could be IoT, but how a lot of times there's a lot of overlap. A lot of times we're using the same technologies or parts of them over and over again. And so, I'll give you, and I'm not answering your question because we're looking to the future, but we'll start with this year, and then
let's start with the past. I mean, you have to start with the past and the present to think about future, right?
Think about restaurants this year.
Yeah.
And I watched, you want to talk about digital transformation, like some cases going from 0 digital to turning the volume to 11 because of survival. And it's a super bright, extreme example. You watched as the shutdown happened, restaurants are closing. They were doing takeout. They were doing stuff like that. I saw restaurants, there's always those awful analysts. I think who we're talking about, that say, if you don't jump on board with this digital blah, 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 you're going to be left behind. They always love to scare companies into getting on board with whatever analyst thing they're talking about. Well, this time it actually came true. As it turns out, it wasn't just a scare tactic, AKA terrifying marketing to get you to buy something. In this case, restaurants, I watched restaurants that were so primitive, you're lucky they're even using an electronic cash register.
Right.
In order to stay alive, I saw lots of restaurants adopt mobile apps or web apps to do e-commerce, to order food online. I saw high-end restaurants quickly pivot to selling burgers and hot dogs overnight. I saw restaurants where it's like, hey, we got a kitchen, back of house can still go, front of house is shut down, so we're going to do takeout. And so I saw them build these mobile apps or things like that, or they're jumping on board with other people. Obviously, lots of companies never thought of going all in with DoorDash and Uber Eats and Postmates and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so this is an example. I know you guys probably don't think of this because you're also, our heads are in the clouds with all this high-minded stuff, but this is a form of digital transformation, and it's an extreme one, like from almost 0 digital anything to, we got to do this because we're going to die. We know tons of businesses that are closed forever, and it's just sad. But I watched a lot of them pivot and get apps, and look at the IPO with DoorDash. Boy, talk about just timing, right?
Yeah.
They went digital to survive. And so all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I can go in this app and it says, do I want the food right now ASAP, or do I want to order it and have it be ready for me at a certain time? I've heard the term ghost kitchens, which almost sounds like the opposite of what it is, but it has to do with, if you've got a kitchen, you've got to, it's almost like you're in the catering business in some way, you know, you just need an outlet, and digital turned out to be that connected outlet, just like you and I are connected right now. The other digital transformation I saw that was super rapid, and I probably talked about this before, was in education in schools. Schools were still teaching school the way they've done for thousands of years, teachers standing up in front of a bunch of kids doing their thing, right? And for better or worse, they had to go digital overnight. And so a bunch of kids are on Zoom and Teams and other, you know, getting education that way. And I heard about synchronous and asynchronous learning. The synchronous learning is the teachers doing the lecture over video like you and I are doing right now. Asynchronous, teachers were making YouTube videos in their spare time, kind of like Khan Academy has had such success with teaching kids. I saw a lot of that. And so those are two instances of what I would call not super digital industries, areas, whatever, you know, that just went, whoa, we got to be there. Other types of, you know, I often talk about the, you know, what's worked well, what hasn't worked well during this time. And it's that connectivity that delivers a digital experience to make something remote seem local. And so those are two examples. Other examples, though, for IoT is the idea of lights out factory, or, you know, I need to remotely, you know, we've got COVID, I can't have people all together in this place, but I'm going to use IoT so that, you know, because what's IoT, right? It's sensing things. I'm knowing something that's happening remotely, and I know it here. It's also like the remote control for your TV. That's the other half of IoT. I've got a remote control that says I'm going to do this with this machine or whatever, and actuate stuff. And you can do it remotely. And remote has been about safety, right? Many have had to work remote, not everybody. I think your ability to work remotely or in person this last year has had a lot to do with the type of jobs. It's had to do with levels of education. I think it's exposed different stratas inside populations of people. You know, some people had no choice. I got to go do my thing. You know, it's pretty interesting. I'm just kind of rambling here, but
no, it's all good stuff. Yeah. I mean,
you wonder what's going to, when you think about 2021, you say, what of this stuff is going to stick?
Right.
You know?
I mean, yeah, with 9/11, I mean, remember the days before 9/11? I mean, we used to be able to walk to the gate with our family, you know, and wave goodbye.
Right.
Now we can't get past the security gate, right? There wasn't a thing called the security gate back then. So, I mean, that's kind of mind-blowing stuff if you really think about it, and how that really changed our culture and the level of the level of trust that we had.
Right.
We for better part of a decade had this extreme paranoia about terrorism on planes, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, President Trump called coronavirus the invisible enemy. It's sort of same kind of you know, adversary that we're dealing with. You know, it's kind of like a terrorist in plain clothes and you know, box cutters. You know, the very. You know, you wouldn't assume that this would be something that you'd have to look out for. It just sneaks up on you, right? And you know, there's a lot of distrust out there, and so I think that's what we're going to have to deal with the most going forward. Is how do we deal with, number one, an invisible enemy, and it's not each other. I mean, it should be humanity versus this invisible enemy, not humanity versus each other and the invisible enemy, right? But you know, the sad thing is that that's one of the things that we'll have to deal with is this level of distrust that's happening not only between different groups, and I think we should be pretty transparent about this. I mean, there's a lot of division in the world and distrust in the world today. I think that's really going to have a tremendous influence on which way IoT goes. Seriously, because when you think about IoT, and we've talked about this in previous episodes, it's about risk mitigation. It's about developing awareness of stuff, whether you want to call it, situational or contextual awareness. In extreme cases, it's surveillance, right? That threaten privacy. These are topics that are going to be important in 2021. I think so, because as much as 2020 might be about, well, we had to make this pivot, a pandemic pivot, and we had to use digital technologies to quote unquote reinvent ourselves to survive, right?
Yeah.
And to be resilient. 2021 is probably going to be a bit more about, okay, how do we now start to trust each other and manage the threat, manage the risk, not only to life, but to enterprise, to industry, to economy, to national security. Think about how many things got damaged in 2020. On so many, damage on so many levels, where now we need to start to develop these constructs to help us reconstitute what normal is. I mean, hopefully we don't call this the new normal. I absolutely don't want this to be the new normal.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? We've heard that all through 2020. Oh, this is the new normal. This is so abnormal.
It is abnormal. And when springtime comes
abnormal.
and the sun's out and it's warm, I want to go to a baseball game.
Right. Right, yeah. and so hopefully, and I think out of necessity, it's going to be the case. Is 2021 is going to be more about how do we reconstitute the normal, what we know is normal. In a as quickly as possible, because for all the benefit that digital technologies have provided in 2020 in helping some institutions, some businesses survive. What we know from all the examples that you provided with education, remote education, remote surgery, remote medicine, is it's suboptimal. Digital does not solve all the problems. It also does not provide, is not able to bridge those things that physical and real experiences and real interactions, human-to-human interactions provide. I think for me, that's the big takeaway. And I think where if we carry this thinking that digital solves everything into 2021, we have a lot of problems. That means that we are looking at the role of digital in an inappropriate way. One that doesn't solve problems, but sustains problems in basically sustaining the new normal. I think that could be, and hopefully that's not what 2021 is about. And I think competitive pressures, the geopolitics are going to push for practical, real solutions that are going to reconstitute the normal, the next normal, or the real new normal, actually.
Yeah. We've often talked about when times are good and the money's flowing. Companies do all kinds of science experiment projects that lead you to believe that whatever cool thing you're working on in IoT or whatever is a hot item. And a lot of people have woken up to going, wow, what you got ain't so hot, bro. And so we've talked about going from the nice to haves to the must haves. And I think, we've seen that human nature is, people don't seem to care as much about stuff until their house is on fire. And so COVID has been the house on fire. the other part of my brain is plugged into this whole world of sustainability and climate change and water issues and a bunch of other stuff. And I feel the frustration from those folks throughout the year, because they're all going, we've been sounding the alarm for something that's going to end life on our planet, and no one seems to care. But all of a sudden, everybody sure does care about this COVID thing. Why can't I get that level of urgency with climate issues or oceans or whatever? And I feel their frustration, but I think it goes back to human nature. Unless your house is literally on fire, people just kind of sleepwalk sometimes through life, or they just kind of, oh, I'm got my thing going, and I don't really feel it. But and so getting that urgency around things like IoT or digital stuff, you really, really need to spend time and drill in and get out of that world of, I'm going to provide a nice to have. Instead, I need to provide a must have service with my whatever. I did, something where you go out and go look for all the houses that are on fire in different corporations, whatever business they might be in, and target that stuff if you're a business, an entrepreneur or whatever, because we're not going to see lots of fun, nice to have projects for quite a while. Incremental improvements aren't going to cut it. People are looking for big needle moving things in a big way. When look how many companies are all going out of business, right? And they want to survive somehow.
Right. And for IoT, maybe, it's about post-pandemic distillation, it's just.
Woo! That sounds like the title. That sounds like the title of like a research paper that you're going to write.
Yeah. I mean, this one I'm good at is coming up with these little taglines.
Well,
all those years in consulting and industry, being an industry analyst. That's what you learn, how to boil things down into a couple of catchphrases. But I think for the IoT community, that's really what it's going to boil down to. And so, I think some of these things that we think are going to be with us forever, or now life has changed, blah blah blah. I think about 80% of that is not going to be so. Maybe 20%. It's like the whole Pareto thing, right? About 20% of what has been installed in our lives due to the pandemic will maybe survive, and it's because that's that additional risk mitigation, normalization capabilities that we've managed to develop, and hopefully it's done in due time. I think we still have a long way to go. So that means great opportunity for our IoT community. Hone in on the stuff that's going to be part of the new normal, not the horrible abnormal that we're going through right now. I think that's important because it is going to flip. This is not normal.
Right.
I think that's the one given for 2021 with the vaccine and all this stuff, all this great stuff that other scientists have done outside of the IoT realm. Like the great stuff that our medical researchers and pharma industry have done. Those things aside, I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunity for the IoT folks, but it really, I think you need to start shifting toward, what's going to be sustainable or what's going to be left over in the post-pandemic era. So it's another shift, another pivot. Otherwise, you're going to be trying to sell stuff for a pandemic when there's no pandemic.
Yes.
By the way, I have to say something. My hat is so cool.
It's super cool.
I love this thing.
You should start. I think you should wear it every day. In fact, when your first opportunity to go visit a customer in person in 2021, wear that hat. You're going to appreciate it. You know what? Also, this whole remote thing, and you talk about customers and everybody, I've got my suit and tie on and we're all so serious in business. I feel like we got a little more humanity because of this pandemic. We saw a lot of people on these Zoom calls doing serious business, And then their little kids came behind them on the video camera.
Yeah.
And the dog jumped in their lap and a whole bunch. And I think we got a little bit of humanity and realized, hey, we're all just people and we all have regular lives. And, you know, this whole notion of I've got this persona at work where I'm the serious person and all that stuff, you know, I think that's been kind of refreshing a little bit to see real people behind the business titles and all that kind of stuff and how you interact.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's sort of the reason why we do IoT Coffee Talk, right? I mean, we're not trying to be serious or, well, you know, we're trying to be helpful and just have an honest conversation, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, we're not wearing suits. We're not, overproduced. In fact, I would say that we're underproduced and we like it that way. I mean, Wayne's World, right? We're like Wayne's World of IoT.
Yeah, exactly. We're in the basement doing the what was it, like the local, what is it, the cable
access channel.
Cable access channel. Yes, exactly. Party on Wayne and party on Garth.
Yes.
Here we are coming live from Aurora, Illinois.
Yeah. So I wanted to share some predictions from our other fellow IoT Coffee talkers. So Stephanie sent a rather long one, so I'll read her thoughts out to our audience. Oh crap! Here comes one from Rick. What?
Uh-oh.
You know what? I asked for one, and these guys write like an entire. You know what, guys? When you watch this episode, go and write a white paper. This is ridiculous. What the hell are you guys? Okay, so let's start off with Stephanie's predictions for 2021. So she says less than 20% of employees will go back into the office in the first half of the year. Does not include those essential workers. And it may rise to around 35 to 40% in the second half of 2021. Yeah, you know, actually, I'll agree with that. So we're getting a little bit closer to normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and while we lose a ton of small businesses providing food and personal services, we will gain a whole host of new and entrepreneurial businesses in 2021. And 2020 saw a record-breaking filing for business tax IDs, and during these hard times, many seek to create their own path and start their own businesses. So cool. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know what I love about Stephanie? She is always so hopeful.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not like the Debbie Downer with the Frosty the Snowman Christmas hat, Santa Claus hat like me. No, she's great. She's great.
No, but
I actually agree with that.
That's a great insight. We talked about restaurants and schools and businesses pivoting, and now she's kind of showing us that individual people are having to pivot.
Yeah.
We've talked about how sometimes stressful times create the greatest innovation.
Yeah.
And these people are like, they probably got laid off from their job.
Yeah.
And they're like, what the hell am I going to do? Yeah. I'm going to put out my own shingle. I got my new tax ID. I'm going to give it a go at whatever. And some will make it and some won't, just like startups, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So going on, she has more, by the way.
Of course.
Very generous.
Yes.
IoT solutions and adoption in 2021 will be driven around safety, compliance, asset tracking, logistics, and supply chain adherence and efficiencies. Like that. Smart city projects will shift around the protection and safety of citizens, the city, buildings, and infrastructure, both physical and cyber security. So physical and cyber. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And especially with the Russia hack, the massive, nasty Russia hack, Russian hack. Yeah. I mean,
that's going to,
who would have known? Who would have known?
When we talk about things that are going to be hangovers from 2020, it's been around for a while, but people didn't know it. And now it's in the news, and it's going to be a serious hangover through 2021 rather. And we're going to hear a lot about it.
Oh my God. David just chimed in. What? And then, oh geez, these guys. Oh, this is going to be a 2-hour show, man. Okay. So moving on, reliance on mobile, digital, and virtual tool software and applications. Isn't that like the everything in the kitchen sink, will surge in 2021. Businesses will seek tools to help automate, offset workforce activities, shift resources to knowledge workers, and further enhance remote and virtual operations. This may include a combination of AI, RPA, business operations, mobile apps, and as a service solution. Sorry, I'm missing out. Oh, okay, so that's different. Okay, so those are her predictions for 2021. Very bright future that we're looking at, I would say.
You know, the whole RPA and personnel and all that kind of stuff, that's certainly going to happen. It's already probably happening. Yeah. I can't tell you how many companies I've seen dipping their toe into that robotic process automation world. Again, we've talked about this before when we talk about dystopian conversations around digital twins replacing people. Yeah. There's a whole lot of companies that laid off a whole lot of people or furloughed of people, but they still have tasks or jobs to be done. And so they're looking for ways and that's automation and all that kind of stuff, right? And so companies are with less money looking for ways to still accomplish those tasks. It's always a touchy subject, but it's real. The building's on fire for a lot of these businesses.
Yeah.
And so they're like, you know what this reminds me of? You know, when you saw the rise of Indian outsourcing of software development happen in the past, and I remember reading articles of startups that were running out of gas in a big way, and they could see their runway getting shorter and shorter with their money, and they, for the first time ever, they go, okay, we're gonna move our development to India, for instance. And you know, this happened over the decades, right? And it saved them, and they were able to deliver the product they were trying to deliver from California, but they did it, you know, I know this sounds really obvious, but they did it at a lower cost level, and it saved their company, and they delivered the product. There was a job to be done and a product to be delivered. And they, you know, I know a lot of this sounds like labor arbitrage and it's like low cost, whatever. It's why American companies move manufacturing to China. It's the same thing. Yeah. And so companies and entities are always going to be looking for that same kind of thing, right? I need to deliver a product and service, and I need to do it more cheaply, especially right now. My house is on fire. I need to survive. And so that next stage, besides outsourcing software development to lower cost countries, outsourcing manufacturing of big things to lower cost countries, there's going to be that, how do I automate digital things with little bots and twins and APIs. And so I think it's part of that same thread, actually, that we've seen all along.
Yeah, but counterpoint to that, though, I am seeing some companies that are selling the differentiated experience of live people, meaning, you know, whether it's a call center or whatever, you don't have to talk to an AI. You don't have to sit there and go through this ridiculous IVR, you know, routing tree. Yeah. You can actually talk to a person instead of going, please tell us what your problem is. Operator, thank you. Please tell us what your, you know, what your problem is so that we can better route you to the appropriate person. Operator. You know, you've had that experience, right? Yes. You don't have to do that with a person. You say, hey, look, and they go, okay. Or they'll help you. Yeah. And then they'll provide that empathic experience. I think that's gonna be a big deal. Maybe that's a prediction for 2022.
That
I love humans.
Yes, that you would get from Deanna Troi on Star Trek Next Generation, the empathic experience. No, this is a great thing.
You're a super nerd, man.
I am. I wouldn't be here with you if I wasn't such a nerd, dude.
Well, I must be equally a nerd because I know what you're talking about. Exactly. It's really pathetic.
But I think you brought up a great point. I think we're going to see a clash here because there's the businesses that are on fire. Many of them are already dead, and the ones that are remaining are trying to stay alive. And so while they will scramble to look for these things, there's also going to be this giant culture clash that says it's about people, it's about humanity, and we are tired of you throwing people overboard off our lifeboat into the ocean.
Yeah.
It's all about us. Who else is there? Who are we doing this for? What's it all for?
Yeah.
If it's not for us, it's not for some AI hive mind that we're going to create that we're all going to be subservient to. And so I think you're right. And I think I can see companies marketing that and positioning themselves around that. Hey, all those people who are suffering and struggling, you're going to be on the phone with them with your call center or your whatever. Because people are like, listen, we're tired of this crap. It's about us. It's like, I don't want to bring politics into it, but it's like Andrew Yang and Humanity First, right? It's about the people. I remember Andrew Yang when he was running for office, and he kind of was those warning bells about, hey, I see this dystopian looking sci-fi future coming at us because of AI. And most of you have never even heard about what I'm talking about, but it's coming. Automated 18-wheelers, automated AI stuff taking your jobs. And so I can see the pushback.
But the thing is AI is just a tool. And just like any tool, it can be used in a lot of different ways, for good, for bad, for humanity, for self. And I totally agree with you, dude. And I think it's like you said, this battle between humanity and human relationships versus digital relationships. And, the thing that we're going to be battling going forward, and IoT will have a place in this, in addressing or having a role, is, what's real, what's fake.
Yeah.
It's also that, because now you can synthesize reality to a degree on the digital end where it creates alternative universes for people, right? So, and there's a different kind of emotional connection that people have with that kind of stuff. Yeah. And, you can argue whether or not it's healthy or unhealthy, but, man, there's a lot of stuff going on, man.
There is a lot of stuff going on.
Crazy. All right. So speaking of that, let's read off the. You want a pile of Bandini. You want Bandini Mountain dumped on you?
I do.
Okay.
Do it.
So here are the predictions from Rick Blood. All
right, kids.
It's for Bandini Mountain.
Kids, cover your ears. This is coming from. Your Uncle Rick.
Hopefully we don't have any F-bombs in here, so let me read this stuff off. Okay, smart city projects will remain largely unfounded. Ooh, wow.
He might be right.
Yeah, he just pooped on everything.
Well, but remember, as we talk about the common thread through all these ideas is economics. And so is there money to do this thing or not? Yeah,
that's what Rick does best, right? And so largely unfounded, as governments everywhere are stretched thin by COVID. That makes sense too.
Yeah.
Right? Smart spaces in commercial buildings and retail and schools and hospitality see traction though. Good. Okay.
But there's overlap between those two things. Smart cities. I saw lots of companies pivot and start calling their smart city efforts smart spaces efforts.
I know.
And so we'll see. Yeah.
It's weird. I wrote a internal paper at IBM about that 8 years ago.
Okay. Wow.
And then somebody told me, well, it's already out there. I went, no, it's not. And then I went and I did some research. It wasn't out there. But, the paper got poo-pooed on. So I figured, but now we're talking about, smart environments, smart spaces, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on to the next thing. He wrote here, IoT platform power continues to consolidate around a few big players. I agree. I think 2021 is going to be the year that the big guys find their mojo. 2000. When you and I were in Barcelona 3 years ago, I wouldn't have said that, right? I mean, you saw AWS there, and you saw Google there.
Google.
But then the next year they were gone. They only only big player that was in there was Microsoft, and but I think
Yeah,
2020.
and that's part of a mega trend too.
Yeah,
Like when you talk about just the cloud, for instance,
yeah,
it's accelerating. Maybe is it because the cloud's better? Maybe is it because my company is on fire right now and I need to all that stuff that my IT department was doing, I'm going to lift and shift it to the cloud and I'm going to let those guys do it instead of my former people that used to do it in my data center. And so we saw that little trend cruising along. And I think that's accelerated dramatically because of this uncertainty and because of money disappearing. And so,
yeah.
people are shopping clouds,
Mhm.
is Azure or AWS or is Google Cloud is always, I think, a little hungrier than the other two players,
Yeah.
or Alibaba or other kind of IBM's cloud. Those kind of it'll be interesting to see. But I think super acceleration, and again, a lot of times it doesn't sound sexy. It doesn't sound like you're a thought leader. It sounds like I'm looking at my balance sheet and I'm going to move all this off of it. And I'm going to replace it, hopefully, but with less to their cloud. And I'm going to pay some money. And so IoT, as Rick's talking about these platform players, there's also a lot happen to be the cloud players. They also happen to be what you hear a lot in the media being railed against, this notion of big tech.
Yeah.
Sometimes. And so, it's an interesting trend happening, and it makes me, I get it. And I probably believe that that's happening. I also, it's almost like feeling bad for humanity too. I feel bad for all the other innovative companies out there who aren't a big company that can just say, yeah, we're going to invest $5 billion on this. Good luck catching up with us, small guy,
Yeah, I think Mark is going to have something to say about this one. He'll definitely be salty about it. That's for sure, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing is a few massive IoT cyber attacks will occur in 2021. At least one will result in a military response. Wow. Yeah, I think that's already started.
Could be.
I don't have much more to say about that. I mean, this year we saw the mother of all cyber attacks from,
Yeah, and what a clever attack it was. Getting into the build system of solar winds and sneaking in that way is super clever.
Yeah.
That's been IoT's Achilles heel is security, and it's on the device side. And it's because there's not
no, it's not. It's not on the device side. It's actually on the SDLC side. It's on the development side. It's not having the sec and DevSec ops. A lot of people talk about DevOps and continuous integration and delivery and blah blah blah. How many people actually go through the steps of really being diligent about security?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like 6G. I was at a 6G symposium, and every single list of here are the big things in 6G is like security was last and least talked about.
And it always is. And that's a problem.
Nobody cares about it.
People will give it lip service and talk a good game, but when it comes right down to it, they're like, yeah, that's because security is never the what. Of the solution. The solution is something that's doing something for you, and it's value, and it's money, and it's great. Security is always this bolt-on.
Yeah.
And it sucks that it's that way, but it continues to be like that.
No, it's nuts, dude. Okay, so the next thing he talks about, oh my God, AI and ML at the edge starts to become pervasive. Yeah. Okay.
We're seeing a lot of that. I think that started with building models in the cloud, training in there, pushing them down to containers. Now you're seeing smart company. You're seeing big open source things like TinyML, where you're being able to. You see innovative startups that have looked at like Swim AI that builds models and trains them at the edge. That's a real thing for sure.
Yeah, training. I would say model training, federated training, model training will eventually start to get there. I mean, people
Yeah.
are talking about it. And that might be a prediction for 2023 or four. But yeah, I mean, yeah, and then also you have everything that's happening on mobile devices that are now trickling down into more commodity. IoT devices, right? The inference, you see with what ARM's doing with microcontrollers, and you have these new architectures for endpoint devices, IoT endpoint devices that include a neural processor, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
can I say, Rick, stating the obvious? No, I'm just kidding. No, it's good. Self-driving cars still don't work. I 1000% agree with that. Bitcoin is still just a speculative investing medium and not a mainstream form of digital payments. Yeah, I will agree with him. And you know what? They have some goofballs that are now starting to come out of the woodworks from, they're emerging from 2017, 2017 about this time of year. Now talking about how this thing is going to go up to like 500,000. It's the same BS. I mean,
Yes.
this thing, if Bitcoin is rising, is because China or Russia are trying to move massive amounts of money to Iran to buy oil or to do whatever other crazy crap that is against the interests of the United States. And let's be real. Or North Korea. North Korea buying. I mean, where the hell did they get all that technology to build intercontinental ballistic missiles and nuclear weapons and God knows what else?
Yes, we can't feed our own people but somehow we magically built this. Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and then think about it. 2017, if you went to any of these conferences, let's put it this way. There's a very heavy Russian link to cryptos and this technology. So,
Gotcha.
I'm not as hopeful about it as saving the world and, anyways, let's move on.
Yeah.
It's a stupid topic. Okay. VC start to call the herd, IoT and AI investments. Okay. Agree with that. Okay. So that was Bandini Mountain from Rick Bellotta. IoT Bandini Mountain from Rick Bellotta. This is very good stuff. So David chimed in and he says, industrial application players will embrace the cloud faster than ever and will leverage the closest edge to their customers to provide in order to provide offering differentiation. This will set up an interesting theater between CSPs, cloud providers, hyperscalers, and ISVs.
There's a lot of acronyms there.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing, David, I would say is, what do you mean by cloud? Because if you're saying public cloud, hyperscale, I'll have to go back and look at the numbers. While we say, there's more stuff going to the cloud, if you really look at the growth over the last few quarters by the big hyperscalers, it's actually, although they're dealing with the law of big numbers, it's not all that impressive. I mean, I think it's really challenging for anyone to argue that their business has gone exponential. It's actually kind of leveling off. It's still growing at around like for instance, AWS at a 20, 30, high 20, 30-ish.
Right. But those days of seeing the 100% CAGR, maybe those days are gone.
Yeah, but it is law of big numbers, right?
Yeah,
but
it is harder.
What we're not seeing is that it went from I think it was a few quarters ago, it was like 32% growth, from the previous quarter or year on year to like 60 or 70. It's nothing like that,
Yeah,
but in absolute terms, it is growing. But I don't know if it's necessarily, anything unusual versus how they were growing before the pandemic. Anyways.
Yeah. And they've all clearly, to his point, a lot of these hyperscalers have had to pivot to that recognition of this whole edge fog computing paradigm.
Oh yeah.
When how many factories said, I've got stuff going on here and I need millisecond response time and I can't ship it. It costs a lot of money to ship it to your distant cloud, all that data to munch on it for a while. I need it now. And that drove the rise of fog computing and then edge computing and all that. And of course, they're all pivoting and saying, oh, but we've got edge solutions too. We got Greengrass. We've got, Azure on-prem. We got all that kind of stuff. It seemed like it's a window opportunity.
Yeah.
For other players, but we'll see how that goes. The hyperscalers certainly have lots of money to pile into that.
Right. And then private 5G hype becomes real with production deployments. Manufacturing, entertainment venues, and retail will lead the way.
That's going to be an interesting one. Obviously, it's self-serving of me to talk about private 5G since I'm in that business, but also, there's always that battle of what's familiar to a customer, a person, versus what might be. And so the uphill battle will be against Wi-Fi 6 in that space. Because if you go, well, I need wireless just in general, because I need to be a little more agile around whatever, and maybe more agile than I could be with Ethernet. And so there's always going to be that, well, hey, I got a Wi-Fi router at my house. I know that. And we've been building out Wi-Fi access points from Cisco and everybody else for years. Yeah. So we understand that this private 5G does sound really interesting, but it's, like anything, it won't just be, it's not just going to just take over because there's a strong incumbent and Wi-Fi 6 or Wi-Fi 6E, adding some extra bands there. It's going to put up a great fight. And I think I consider it the incumbent, actually. And I think, Yeah.
Yikes. That was loud. I agree with you. I think, in general, the private 5G discourse has been largely focused on, speed, bandwidth, spectrum. But, I wrote about this like 2 years ago. It boils down to carrier grade and making it industrial grade. And what does that mean? A lot of it really boils down to security, the thing that we don't like to talk about. And then, all the stuff related to reliability, that all boils down to the deployment, the way that you deploy the networks. And, so.
You were talking about spectrum there. We're not going to name any names, but there's some mobile operators out in the US right now talking about 5G, and they're constrained by how little spectrum they have for certain things. And so customers are like looking at their phone like, I'm not seeing it. And it may not necessarily be because the 5G technology is not there. It's because the operator doesn't have enough width of a spectrum for those signals to bounce around. And that's a thing. It's a tough thing. If you have a really narrow pipe with new technology, customers aren't going to notice a difference.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if I'm going to apologize to our audience. I know that we're going long, but we don't care because we're having fun, right, Rob?
We don't care.
Yeah.
What else would we be doing? Shopping for presents, maybe.
No, but we have to represent our fellow IoT Coffee Talk.
We do, and they've got a lot of good things to say. Clearly, they have more intelligent things to say than you and I do. So good thing that they're writing to us.
I didn't know these guys were so smart.
I know. Who knew? Wow. It's almost like we're the dumb news reporter here.
Yeah, we are.
We're just reading the news from the smart people. The smart people are inside this rectangular thing.
They're the experts, and we're just the pundits.
We're pundits.
We're coloring everything.
Exactly.
Twisting people's minds. Okay, so next, Siemens, Schneider, Viva, or Rockwell will make a play for open source, and will try to acquire Induction or HiByte to crush them, not integrate them. Ooh, wow, that's so nasty.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
A play for open source. So, what is it? A couple of years ago, Rockwell, whatever, did $1 billion investment in PTC around ThingWorks, and you're like, okay, that's what they're doing. Is that not enough? Is it a thing about killing off open source products, or I don't know. I mean, that's a weird one. Now it's not unusual to see big companies buy other competitors and then just snuff the life out of them, just to get them out of there, and they paid to kill them.
Oh man!
But I don't know how that works with open source. Open source is supposed to be the woman with the big hammer in the Apple commercial smashing it in there, because the open source is not supposed to be able to be controlled by big tech or big companies that have outsized budgets that can, change the course of things, just based on their pocketbook.
Yeah, but I mean, ultimately, some big player rises from all the consolidation that happens, and there is consolidation that happens to make the technology enterprise or consumer enterprise industrial grade.
Yeah.
And that becomes the big 900-pound gorilla in the room. I mean, it always happens. And so this idea that open is open, yeah, you're going to have a bunch of folks who are hackers that contribute, and they'll build out certain aspects of the code base or whatever. But when it comes to monetization, and they'll give it away for free, but when it comes to monetization of the technology, it's going to be the red hat of that particular open source domain that's going to make all the dinero, and it's good dinero, but that becomes a struggle, right? And that's what the little guys try to fight for. But at the end of the day, scale beats out everything. Same with Open RAN. Everyone's talking about Open RAN. Oh yeah, it's going to diversify the vendor landscape. It's like, yes, it will, and it's going to have its open source, maturation challenges. But at the end of the day, it's going to be one or two players that emerge that are going to compete with the traditional players, and the traditional players are not going to go away. They still stick around, or they'll figure out how to interface with some of these open technology disciplines, whether or not it's the architecture or the API sets. There's going to be always some middleware player. So that's the other thing. It's the big scale guys, and then the middleware guy that's going to figure out how do we connect, all the dirty stuff in between.
Yes.
All the old dirty stuff and all the new dirty stuff.
That's a good point.
Middleware.
Middleware. I've been a middleware guy for a long time. Gosh,
I'm
connecting.
I love middleware. So fun. Yeah,
it is fun.
That's where all the fun stuff happens.
It is fun, but it's interesting when you talk about
together.
When you talk about the open source and trends there. A lot of open source people have railed against AWS because they're an example of, we cobbled together all this great open source stuff and we followed the rules. They said we could do it. And we've built this whole cloud based on all this open source technology, and all the money's coming to us. And all those people who labored tirelessly at night and weekends building these technologies, they feel like they got the short end of the stick. Mm-hmm. They did all the work and built all this technology. Amazon's making all the money off of it. And so I've seen over time a pivot recently-ish of open source databases, open source whatevers, changing some licensing models to try to prevent what happened to others with AWS. I've seen a big open source model has been something called Open Core, where it's like, here's the free thing, and then here's the enterprise version of the free thing that has better security, better whatever, and we're going to charge for that. And you've seen that model for a long time, and charging for support. Now I'm seeing a model where they're all like, okay, maybe we'll open source the whole thing, even all the enterprise features, but we are now going to have our own cloud model where we're going to monetize this free thing we made off of hosting it ourselves on your behalf. and that's how we'll make revenue. It's basically them taking a page out of the AWS playbook and saying, this is a new model that we will do.
Yeah, and when my key takeaway out of reInvent this year was, and this is probably something that's been happening for quite some time, but this is what you get blinded to when you're just reading other people's research notes, is that, I mean, these guys are really creating a walled garden, but it's a walled garden that is that is being built, constructed through all these interfaces and integrations. And so if you want to call it the platform, yes, they're not in a platform business. They're building a platform, middleware platform, basically workflow and middleware platform that stitches all these different components, whether it's, the DevSecOps processes or the SDLC processes or the data, the containers, and all the entire, technology stack. They're creating this holistic platform, and that's what you get stuck in if you're with AWS. And it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. But it certainly challenges. It's a challenge to this whole idea of hybrid cloud, right? I mean, their goal is like, okay, yeah, we'll expose stuff so that this hybrid cloud stuff can happen, but we're going to make AWS so compelling that people aren't going to want to leave.
It's not a research note necessarily, but some feedback I heard from people related to the IoT offerings and updates that Amazon talked about at reInvent was I heard more than one person say, wow, they're really starting to compete against their partners now. They're doing more, and it's not like Microsoft hasn't done that as well. So again, big, giant tech saying, well, we were providing this tool set, and then where partners are going to build all the cool solutions. Now they're doing more and more and more, and they're consuming stuff that a partner used to do and ate their whole business in one announcement, And I know how chilling that can feel to players out there when they see a giant player just go, oh, wow, they just consumed our whole, what was unique about us in one announcement at reInvent.
And so I don't know, maybe a lot of this kumbaya language that we see being thrown around in sort of the academic circles, like co-opetition stuff, maybe are bad words. Maybe they do a disservice to the little guy, and actually co-opetition waters down competition. I mean, I think these are constructs. These are semantics that are geared toward favoring scale and the big players, and really getting the smaller guys to partner with bigger guys and contribute assets and IP and capability that contributes to the bigger guy, has more benefit for the bigger guy. Who knows?
Sometimes the big guy is looking at how are things going. We had a business model that says we're going to provide this tool set and platform in a horizontal generic way for IoT, for instance. And we thought we were going to make this much money out of it. It's also possible that they're like, this isn't working out like we thought. We're not making the money we thought we were going to make. So let's dive vertically into the solution that we're seeing partners do. Maybe that's the answer to increase our revenues. And along the way, I'm sorry, I absolutely stepped on you. People used to talk about that with Microsoft in the 90s and stuff, this giant elephant that actually just, I accidentally stomped on your whole business. My bad.
So, I mean, it's a whole marketplace issue and the conflict of interest that everyone seems to, not entirely get, I would say, but are developing a growing concern of. But let's go to I think this might be the last one on Rick's list. Or no, David's list is that Rick will physically assault a consortium CEO. The IoT CT crew will bail him out in record time with a successful GoFundMe campaign. And with the leftover funds, we will open said consortium.
Outstanding. Rick,
I don't know whether or not David really wanted me to read that out, but if you wrote it, it gets read and it gets reacted to.
Well, you know what? I will come to Rick's defense, and I'll just repeat something that I know he's put out there. He rails against these pay-to-play consortiums and I saw a new one get spun up the other day. A friend of mine sent me, hey, it looks like the Linux Foundation is going to spin up a new ag tech consortium. And here's the slides. $1 million or $500,000 to join if you're this size company, and only $100,000 to join. And we're all going to get together and we're going to set the standards, just like Object Management Group always talks about, with Industrial Internet Consortium and now Digital Twin. We're all going to get the big players together and we're going to set the standard. And I can totally understand why Rick would rail against that. It's like, a lot of big guys with a lot of money who paid to be there to put logos on a web page. They're all going to get together and have meetings, and someone's going to get paid a salary because they got a whole bunch of people to pay to be a part of this consortium. And they may just steamroll a whole bunch of other folks. So I totally get where he's coming from. And I love the humor in him physically assaulting one of these players.
Yeah, that would be a moment, right? Maybe 2022, because a lot of these consortiums haven't really reached.
It's weird to me is when I see an open source consortium put together a sub consortium asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars from big companies. It seems to fly in the face of the spirit of open source, doesn't it? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it really depends on who's paying for it. If it's end market customers, let's say CIOs of big corporations, maybe that, because they see value in it. But if it's large tech companies, I think that's really where the problem lies. Because, if you think about it, the open source technologies ultimately are supposed to provide benefit for developers and the end market customers, not necessarily the tech companies and the big tech companies in the middle, right? I mean, because a lot of these things, and from an end market perspective, if you're a CIO, are architectural decisions, like Open RAN. Open RAN's going to take over the world, and it's going to destroy Ericsson and Nokia and Huawei. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. A carrier is going to make a decision as to what the role Open RAN or ORAN and its API and suggested architectures are going to play, and then everyone else has to follow suit, and it's going to be a hodgepodge of stuff because they're going to be dealing with the Ericsson architecture and the Huawei architecture and the Nokia architecture and the Cisco architecture and all these other contending proprietary architectures, and they all have to make this stuff work together.
Yeah.
And maybe the ORAN stuff might be sort of this SOA idea from way back when. You remember SOA, right?
I do.
What do they call that?
They just service orientation architecture, but it was back during the SOAP and XML days when SOA came to, and you had all those working groups. It's funny as far as SOA and telecom. When I first joined Microsoft, I was in this group. We had the mobile and embedded devices group building Windows Mobile and Windows CE, but we're also part of this thing called communication sector, which was focused on telco. The very first thing I did as part of being in comm sector was when I joined, within 2 weeks of me joining in Redmond, Washington, I was on a plane to Kuala Lumpur to talk to mobile operators in KL in Malaysia about SOA architectures, because .NET had really pushed SOA architectures, because that was kind of the underpinning of .NET, a lot of web services. And like for those of mobile operators that happen to be in Malaysia, I was spending time with Cellcom. I think Maxis is the bigger player there, but we talked about how we're going to bring SOA technology to deliver all these new services in the early days. And I remember going next door to Bangkok and training companies from all over Southeast Asia and Australia on how to do SOA for telcos.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
Another big thing to take away there too with Open RAN is just for everyone to remember that there are always going to be barbarians at your gate.
Yeah.
And never get complacent, because they're and they will seem like no big deal today, and it'll seem like what they're offering is just a little toy. But those, in my experience in the computer business, those toys end up taking over the world.
Yeah.
So they should always be taken seriously.
Yeah. Yep. Middleware.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So let me see. Are we at the end here? I think we are. I mean, there's a couple of other ridiculous posts that looks like there's this exchange between Rick and David. Oh, here's one thing. Okay, I won't agree with Rick on this. Is like we also finally agree that robotic vacuums are stupid, and a connected one is even stupider. I'll have to disagree with that statement, because we do have one, and it's surprisingly good, and it's connected. Yeah. But one fear that I have, and there's an article that came out about this, is that I think it operates on a LiDAR and it scans your house. I think the stupid part, or the scary part, is that the privacy issues that might be associated with it, and that it might even record stuff. I have no idea what this thing
does. The product work well?
Oh yeah. As a vacuum, a robotic vacuum, it does a surprisingly good job.
Because I remember my wife and I buying kind of the V1 product of the Roomba, and it was like, it reminded me of playing Pong.
Yeah. Well, it had the bumper, and it would bang, it wouldn't stop until it banged into a baseboard, but then it would bang into the baseboard at full velocity and would scuff all your baseboard. Yeah. But that's what I couldn't stand about it.
But, as someone who's gotten hopefully a little wiser over the years in this space, I totally get now that you should do that. You should ship that product that's just like Pong, and then the next version is going to be smarter, and the next, it's just like if you're a cohort startup going through Y Combinator, for instance, they're just like, the first thing you need to do is ship, get it out there, get that ugly. It's like, like Paul
MVP.
Graham. Yes, Paul Graham, from Y, or Reid Hoffman. It's like from LinkedIn. It's like, if you're not completely embarrassed by your product, then you shipped too late. So think about that. And so that V1 iRobot, it was kind of embarrassing. But if they had polished it for 10 more years to make it perfect, guess what would have happened? They would have gone out of business. Yeah. So ship the ugly thing. Also, remember, sometimes like you and I are sitting here talking right now, and we talk about, are we just stating the obvious? I've also learned over the years that things that are obvious to me are not obvious to 99% of the population sometimes. Yeah. I'm not trying to make myself seem smarter, because I'm not. I'm not really a naturally smart guy. I'm a grinder. But I find over and over again that a lot of people are like, wow, that's magic. I'm like, really? Okay. But yes, ship early and often. Don't wait too late.
Man. Well, my thoughts on that.
Yes. And now if it's mission critical stuff, but look, make the whole MVP deal. It's all about learning. Did I learn something?
Yeah.
When Elon Musk's latest rocket fired and did the bend, and then it ended up crashing, he said it was a success because they needed to learn some stuff that happened earlier in the flight. Yeah. The landing sucked, but that wasn't what they were trying to learn.
Right. But here's and you're making a great point. And the big difference is he didn't have a $20 million payload in that rocket that crashed.
True.
Right? Yeah. And that's what people need to understand about MVP, is that it's really more geared toward, the product development cycles that you might go through. That's always my recommendation when people talk about just get shit out there. I was like, no, don't put shit out there, because you know what? People will return it and they'll ruin your business. Or you do like what Google does all the time. they'll put out a product like Google Plus and I actually thought it was pretty good. I never used it. But, after they find out, it's not as good as what Facebook is doing, they trash it. And guess what? They screwed a bunch of people who actually depended on that thing.
I thought Google Plus was very techy. There's a lot of great tech news being shared there by a lot of tech people.
Yeah, it had some really cool UI concepts and stuff like that.
Yeah, like the circles and stuff. Yeah, exactly. I thought it was really clever.
Yeah, but it probably wasn't well researched, and obviously because it didn't catch on. But anyways, on that note, I have the coolest hat in the world.
Yeah, you do. It rocks.
And my key takeaway from 2020 is Rob has the most velvety vocals of anyone that I've ever jammed with on Zoom. That means that he's the only person that I've ever jammed with on Zoom.
So does this mean
that's low bar?
So it's a prediction for 2021 that you and I are going to rock out at Coachella.
Yes.
When everybody's had the vaccine and we're all back and we're going to be out there in the desert. That's awesome.
Yeah. Or at least IoT Stars, right?
Okay. At least there.
Barcelona. Yeah.
Maybe Mark Poos will let us have a jam session at IoT Stars.
Yep.
Why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. So you want to take us out, buddy?
I'm going to take us out. We're flying towards Christmas. In fact, we're probably flying in parallel with Santa right now, probably kind of getting started. You probably haven't looked at the whole NORAD thing, but we're going to fly towards 2021. We are down to, we're under 2 weeks, almost a week of getting out of this shit show that is 2020. And we're going to go on to a brighter future in 2021. You've got some predictions, some crazy stuff from us. And so we are so, so grateful for all of you who have listened to our podcast and videos over this awful year, but hopefully it's brought us all a lot closer together humanity-wise and seeing each other. So go to https://www.iotcoffeetalk.com, which is going to redirect you to this thing called YouTube. They put videos on the internet. It's crazy. You can like us, click the bell, subscribe. Right now. And then maybe we'll give you a bonus video of us playing some great rock song, from Jimi Hendrix. You never know, because that's part of it. We're going to give you a little bonus stuff. Maybe we'll give you a TikTok dance or something like that too. You never know. Watch out for it. But we are so happy to take us out this year. Anything left for you, man, Mr. Santa?
Hey, no. It's like, let's stay positive. Let's do the hard work. IoT community, we can do it. We can save the world. And I really mean that. And to everyone who's made it this far in this episode, we know that was a really super long one. Hopefully you got something out of it, and hopefully you'll have a chance to go back to previous episodes. There's a lot of gems there. I learn a lot from these guys. From you, Rob, everyone. It's eye-opening stuff, and that's why we do it every week. And we know that these things are long. They're sometimes rambling, but there's always a revelation, at least for me, in each of the episodes. And I feel really personally blessed to have not only this outlet to just get stuff off my chest, but to interact with some really brilliant people that I respect and love. And so also love our audience. And to all those of you who've made it this far, a special thank you for bearing with us. But please stay safe, stay healthy, wear a mask, take care of yourselves, your loved ones, your family. Let's make it into 2021. And, let's continue to pray for our world. Let's continue to pray for IoT. And God bless everyone. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Right?
All right.
All right, brother.
Party on, Garth. We'll see you on the other side, folks. Yep. And we're out. Woo-hoo.